Here's a story of how our family ended up calling Kansas City our home. Now, this is a story of how we relocated from Los Angeles, California to Kansas City. Stay tuned to the very end, and I'm going to include a few things that we absolutely love about Kansas City and a few things that we really do miss about California. Our family has been in Kansas City for 3 years, and we have loved every second of it. We weren't always here. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and my wife was born in Korea, raised in the Philippines, and lived in Northern California. So how did a couple of Californians and their 2 kids end up here in Kansas City? Well, it started back in 2018. Back then, my wife and I had no kids, and we were happily living in California. I was working as a pastor of a small church, and my wife was working as an emergency room nurse at Arcadia Hospital, a small hospital in Southern California. Joyfully, we found out that we were pregnant in early 2019, and at the same time, I had started a doctoral program to earn my PhD at a seminary here in Kansas City called Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. The way the program was structured, students could take classes even if they didn't live here in Kansas City. In order to take a class, we would have to do a lot of the coursework at home and then fly out for a week for class time in Kansas City. The first time that I ever visited Kansas City was the cold winter of 2019 while my pregnant wife stayed at home. Before I came out here for class, my wife and I started discussing the future of our family. Our first child was due in September of 2019, and we were beginning to think about the life that we would envision for our future children and our family. One of the key questions that has been asked throughout history is, what is a good life? In other words, what kind of life could one live and find deep fulfillment and joy? As our family thought about this, we pondered what life we could live that would be most God-glorifying and joyful for our family. We were happy in California, but with our first child coming, we wanted to prioritize our responsibility as his parents. Unfortunately, as a pastor and a nurse, we knew that it would be almost impossible to live in California without both of us working, without a dual income. It was just too expensive for us to live there. So while I was out here in Kansas City for the first time, my wife and I started talking about the possibility of moving out here. It was during the winter time, so like I mentioned before, it was very cold. It was colder than any place I've ever lived before. However, we were looking at the lower cost of living here, and we were extremely attracted to the possibility of being a one-income household. Furthermore, while I was out here, I remembered meeting a lot of people who shared a like-minded passion while I was in class. I remember thinking that I could live here despite the weather if the people were going to be this great. So when I got home after my week-long trip in the winter, my wife and I started deliberating. We had a lot of friends in Southern California, and we loved going to the beach. We would also miss the food and, of course, the beautiful weather. But we decided that we would move forward with relocating here to Kansas City. One of the key factors was this. We knew that home ownership in Southern California was going to be difficult for people who earned as much as we did. Despite having 2 stable jobs, we were not going to be able to save up enough money to be able to buy a property there. So when we started looking at real estate in Kansas City, we knew that home ownership was very doable. In 2019, homes in Los Angeles were almost 4 to 5 times more expensive than homes here in Kansas City. Another desire that we had was for passive income. I just started to think through what that would look like. I don't have the stomach for a great deal of risk, so I wanted to invest in something that had pretty stable gains and returns. After studying a few options, including investing in the stock market and things like that, I settled on real estate as the best use of our money. Here are the reasons why. I could easily understand how the investment worked. Remember, I was, and I still am, a full-time PhD student. With the coursework that I had, I didn't have the time or the aptitude to learn all the ins and outs of the stock market. Number 2, I knew that it was a commodity that everyone would need. Everyone has and always will need a place to live. Investing in real estate gives you a portion of land where you can provide an essential need for someone, which was great for long-term security. And lastly, it was one of the few investments that could provide a monthly positive cash flow. One of the things that we were considering after I finished my PhD was working as missionaries in foreign countries. If we had assets that could give us monthly cash flow, then that would be a great way to support ourselves in that endeavor. So in deciding to move to Kansas City, I knew that with the prices of properties here, we would be able to invest in real estate. One of the easiest ways to do that would be to find a home that we could buy that would work great for us for about 1 or 2 years, and then find another home that we could move into. So when we were looking for homes here in Kansas City, we had a few criteria. First, we wanted something that was going to be in a safe situation. Second, we wanted something that was going to be close to my school. And third, we wanted something that was going to be close to our church. Now, let me tell you one mistake and one thing that we would definitely do again in moving here. So the mistake that we made was a really silly mistake when we kind of think about it, and when I kind of describe it to you. The mistake that we made was we didn't come out to Kansas City to explore the different areas of the city. And here's the reason why this is a really big mistake. If you're coming here from different areas of the country, what is considered a safe location is going to vary from person to person. Where we lived in Los Angeles was a location that might have been slightly higher than average in crime, but we never felt unsafe there. We had a neighborhood app called Ring, and it would update us with the local crime. And there was always a lot of activity, a lot of break-ins, a lot of stolen cars, and stuff like that. But when we described to our realtor what was a safe location, we didn't think through that everyone would have different opinions of what is safe. So when we asked the few people that we knew here, we were allowing them to determine what we meant by safe. However, we should have done the work of flying out here to check out the areas and to form our own opinion. So the reason that this was a mistake is that there are pros and cons of every single area. The area that you think might be the safest may be further away from a lot of the things that you want to be close to, like entertainment options. But there's another thing that we would definitely do again, and I would advise anybody who's moving to a different place to do. The one thing that we did is that we came already with the community in mind. When we were in LA, we were interviewing different churches that we would target as we moved here. And this was pivotal because we decided on a church before we moved, and then we were able to move close to that church and immediately get plugged into a community. So this is a tip that I would recommend for anyone moving out here, and it was especially important for us since we moved right before COVID shut everything down. So if you're moving either here to Kansas City, or if you're looking for just relocation tips, I would say target a few communities. Join a few Facebook groups and see where those people congregate. Target a few churches that you might want to explore with your family. Do those types of things before you move so that you already have a head start of building new community. Now, if you're looking to move out here to Kansas City, I would love to help you. Since moving, I've become a local realtor and I've learned so much about the area. I would love to help you navigate your move out here to Kansas City. Now, if you're looking to sell a house in Kansas City, I would love to help you as well. Fountain City has a podcast, and if you choose to sell a house with me, I will have you on that podcast to ensure that buyers will hear everything that you love about your home. I will also make sure that your home's video tour makes it here on YouTube. So please give me a call, shoot me a text, or send me an email. My phone number is 626-226-6611, and my email is jaylenn.wong@gmail.com. Because this is a story of our move out here, I also put the contact information of the realtor that we used to help us move out here. Her name is Amanda Sitzman, and she was fantastic. If you decide not to move with me, please give her a call. She's gonna take care of you well like she did for our family. So after we solidified the decision, I informed my church and we started to make plans for the transition. Our son, Keller, was born on September 20th, 2019, and after a few very scary days in the NICU, we took him home to our house in Southern California and began searching in earnest. Now, we had a list of things that we wanted, including a price range that we wanted to work with. We quickly found out that what we were looking for, it was gonna be hard to stay in that range. So during this time, when we moved out here, the plan was that Emily would work and I would stay home and study, so she was looking for a job here as a nurse in Kansas City. So she finally secured something, and we found out that we could be approved for a higher purchase price. So Emily and I talked, and we decided that we would bump our budget up slightly, and that seemed to do the trick. I think going back to that mistake that we made of not visiting and touring homes before, we just didn't know what our budget would buy us. We thought that we could get everything that we wanted for our initial budget, but we quickly found out that this wasn't going to be the case, so we had to raise our budget. Shortly after we raised our budget, Amanda found a house that previously had a contract, but then that contract fell through. So Amanda brought this house to us, and we made an offer, and that was accepted. So Amanda asked us if we were going to come out for the appraisal to see the house, but we decided that it was going to be too hard for us to fly out and see the house, especially with our young son. So it put us in the weird position of buying a house before we had actually set foot inside the house. In fact, we knew that in deciding not to visit, the first time that we would step foot inside our new house was going to be after we had closed on it or after we had bought it. So looking back, after helping a ton of people move here, I definitely would not recommend that. I would always recommend that you come and see your home location before you move and check it out for you. Now, it worked out for us, but again, I would not recommend doing it how we did. So Emily and I completed our last days at work in California, and we got to packing everything. So we said goodbye to our friends and our family, and that was extremely difficult because we didn't really know what life in Kansas City had for us at the time, and we didn't know how wonderful it was going to be out here. We held a party after we packed up our house, and we invited a lot of friends that I had known for a very long time. We invited a lot of people from our church. Then two of my friends Justin and Joe set out with me to drive across the country in the winter of 2020. My wife stayed back to wait until we could all get to Kansas City, and the plan was for her and my son Keller to fly out so that she didn't have to travel across the country with an infant. At the time he was still breastfeeding, it would have been very difficult to drive him across the United States. She was able to make her trip a lot less stressful, so I would recommend that again to anyone who's moving with young children. If you have young children and you have someone that can drive out here first and then have the young children fly with the other parent, I would say that that is the best way to move across the country. We closed on our home on January 13th, 2020, and like I said before, the very first time we stepped inside the house was after we had bought it. So we essentially didn't even have a choice if we didn't like it, and luckily we loved it. We've loved it here ever since. We've lived here for 3 years now, and life has changed so much. Like I said, 3 things that we love about Kansas City. The lower cost of living is wonderful. The second thing is that our community has been wonderful. We love the people here. We absolutely adore the friendships that we have made, and we have really felt taken care of. And the last thing is that we feel that life here is truly full of a whole bunch of opportunities, not only for myself, but for my wife and for our 2 kids. Now, the 3 things that we miss about California, and I'll go into depth in another video, are first, we do miss the weather. Now, the weather isn't as terrible here as I initially thought, but it still is not the 75 and sunny that Southern California was. Another thing that I truly, truly miss is In-N-Out Burger. Now, there is no burger out here that, for my money, is comparable to In-N-Out. I've had some good burgers out here, but I will tell you, I believe that In-N-Out makes the best burger in America, and there's really nothing out here that, at least to me, compares. The last thing that I miss is that my wife and I really enjoyed going to the beach. We were about 40 minutes from the beach where we lived in California, and we would make the trip sometimes weekly. We loved it there, and we loved the beach, and of course, we're pretty landlocked here in Kansas City. What about you? Are you considering moving here from California? If you are, click on this next video. I think it would be helpful for you as you consider the change.